Hi everyone, I'm Vicky Stark and I'm the author of Runaway Husbands. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm happy to see you. And we have a special Q&A tonight with a very special topic, which is sex. So when I wrote in the Facebook group earlier today, inviting people to leave their questions, I wrote that we're going to be talking about sex, and Kate responded by saying, "What sex?" Question mark. Yes, it's been that long. So this is actually a huge and very important topic, and one that we really don't talk about enough, because it's very central for many of us in our husband's departure. So tonight we're going to shine the light on it, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts about it. So I have three questions from different women that are on this topic, and I'll read them all three, and then I'll just tell you what I think about them. Lynette asks, one question that hasn't come up, and I wonder if you might consider discussing it, is whether a mismatch in sexual desire is a factor. I know that it was in my marriage. For me, I felt a disconnect, and I think my runaway husband felt unloved because of it. Before the sudden end of my marriage, I really didn't think about it all that much. And I was okay about where things were at, but I suspect it wasn't okay for him. So that's the primary question from Lynette. And then Jacqueline says, do they leave for the thrill of new uninhibited sex instead of, quote, the same old? And then Pamela asks, does anyone else feel violated that their runaway husband was sleeping with you and the other woman at the same time? And then finally, Jacqueline asks again another question. Why did they go away with someone much younger? Is it because they are younger and makes them think that they're young, which is sort of a corollary of the whole issue about sex? So, getting back to Lynette's initial question about the mismatch in sexual desire. I've been a marriage counselor for a long time, over 30 years. And so I work with people not only in the issue of divorce, but also in marriage. And the idea of a mismatch in sexual desire is pretty standard. I suppose the people who don't have a mismatch don't come to marriage counseling, so we don't hear about it that much. But in many of the couples that I work with, there is this discrepancy in terms of sexual desire. It's often that the man has more desire and wants more frequency and wants more variety and wants to try new things. Sometimes it's the woman, but the majority of the time it's the man. So in the runaway husbands community, a lot of the marriages that break up in this way are long-term marriages. And you've been sleeping with him for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And frankly, after 20 years or 25 years or 30 years, in many marriages, it becomes pretty mundane. And sometimes that's totally not a problem. It's not a problem for her and it's not a problem for him. But sometimes men get to a certain point in their lives, where they're 50 or 60 years old or even in their 40s, and they start to feel dissatisfied. And they feel like, is this all there is? And then they also, if they come into this phase that's called andropause, which is sort of like a corollary to menopause. And what happens in andropause, it's a biological fact, it's a medical fact, that the level of testosterone starts to drop in a man's body. And he starts to notice a change in his sexuality so that he's not as easily turned on, he can't function as well, and he starts to get scared. He starts to worry that, am I going to lose it? Am I not going to be able to perform? Can I still be sexual? And so then being with the same wife doesn't have enough of an oomph, to make him feel really turned on, really sexual. And then if another woman comes into his life, or the possibility of another woman comes into his life, he suddenly feels like he has a new lease on life. And that's the question of Jacqueline, why do they go with someone so much younger? Is it because the person is younger and it makes them think that they're young? So the answer is yes. They suddenly feel like, and like I often say, like there's nothing like an affair to turn you on. So they suddenly feel very alive, very vibrant, very sexual, and they feel as though that is so precious, that they don't want to lose that. Now, they don't want to tell their wives that because it's not her fault that they've been sleeping together for 25 years. They're married, they're a couple. And so they've been monogamous and they've been sleeping together for 25 years. And, things are not going to be all shaken up and going to be all that different in many couples, when there's been this longevity of the relationship. So while when he's leaving, he often, I've rarely heard that he turns to her and says it's because of that sexual mismatch. But it's my guess that the core of a lot of the reasons that your husbands leave has to do with this sexuality. And has to do with it, and it really doesn't have to do with you. It has to do with their own fear of losing that sexual edge that they feel that they can retrieve when they're in an affair and they're with another woman. So we call it midlife crisis. You can call it andropause. You can call it a lot of different things, but a lot of the times the men have to run away because they don't want to face it, and they don't want you to know that they're feeling worried about their own performance or worried about their own sexuality. And I think in many marriages, like Lynette has written about here, she said, I didn't really think there was all that much of a problem, and I was okay about where things were at. And for many women, they're okay about it. If the sex life has sort of dwindled down, they're not having sex as often, it's not as central to the relationship. The wives are like, I'm good with that. They're fine with that. And the husbands have this nagging sense of loss. And what Lynette is saying here, which could very well be true, is that they feel that you don't care about them. They feel unloved. They feel that if you really loved them, you'd make more of an effort to be more available, to be more interested in the sexual arena. That's not blaming the victim. That's not blaming you, because you're both involved in this sexual relationship. And often it's very hard, as time goes on, when one partner wants more frequency and the other partner is fine with less frequency. And that's just your different sexual appetites. It's hardwired, it's genetic, it's a lot of things. And so I really don't want anyone to feel badly or to feel guilty about the fact that you weren't, totally, interested at all times, and that there may have been times when your husband turned to you and said, "Do you want to?" And you said, "No, thanks, not in the mood," because that happens all the time in relationships, and it doesn't always or typically lead to the breakdown of the relationship. The other issue for me always is that if somebody is having a problem in the relationship, they need to verbalize it and make it clear. If he's having a problem with that side of the relationship, the sexual side, he needs to bring it to you, to talk with you about it. Maybe to propose that you work on it together in some way, shape, or form. And the thing that's always so primary for me is that it's not the fact that marriages break down, because I recognize that marriages sometimes do break down, but it's the way the husbands leave in such a cruel and callous way, and in many cases a very hurtful way, attacking it and trying to bring you down. And so that's really the issue and the problem, not the fact that you had maybe a difference in the level of sexual desire, or a difference in the way you dealt with your finances, or the way you parented your children. All of these hot button issues that so often lead to conflict in a couple. So I hope that clarifies a bit about the fact that that sometimes in our community that sexual relationship is at the core of the reasons that the men leave, even though they don't talk about it. All right. Somebody here is saying that I missed what you might have said, but what if you had a very active and wonderful sex life? We were still well matched in that way, but he still cheated on you. Okay, that's a different story. If you had a well matched, vibrant sex life, then sex wasn't the issue. There was some other issue, something else was going on. So it's not, definitely it's not everybody. It's a certain percentage of the women in our community. And there are many different reasons why men leave, although sex is often one of them. So that's it for tonight. I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Send me your questions next Wednesday, and we'll have another Wednesday night Facebook Q&A. And in the meantime, be well, be kind to yourself, and have a good week. Take care.